What's going on, guys? This is the 5 Year Pass podcast. It's me, Suddy. This is Sham, and today we'll be talking about the games over the weekend. A little bit late to the party, but it was some really interesting games. We wanted to give kind of the whole weekend's games over. So obviously, Leeds winning last night, coming to the top 10, which is a huge move for them, considering they've let in so many goals, especially in the last 5 or 6 weeks. It just feels they've bloody let in 3 goals every game. But we're going to talk about 3 big games over the weekend. We're going to start off with City, Liverpool, Sham. So firstly, how you doing, man? All good?
Yeah, all good, all good. Some interesting results on the weekend. Yeah, some quite important results as well. And I think we're about as close as we can to anointing a champion without really officially anointing them, but they are the champions elect, aren't they?
Absolutely. I can't. It's hard to look past City right now. It has to. I mean, I in my head I was thinking, I said a draw for this game. I think you said 2-1 the City game.
Yeah.
I think you said 2-1. Yeah. I mean, who saw 4-1 coming? And in fact, I mean, I was sorry to say, but the Salah goal was a dive. I felt it was a dive. He took the best situation that he could, and from being pulled down, I'm surprised it wasn't VAR compiled and VAR reviewed. I mean, it was what I've liked about Pep this season.
Sorry, you're saying it wasn't.
It wasn't right. It didn't go to VAR.
Okay. Yeah, Diaz put his arm in a position where you're a bit like, oh, if you put your arm in that position,
you're
asking for trouble.
Well, okay,
even if that Salah did milk it, yeah.
Yeah, even if it was a proper penalty, Stonewall penalty, it did Liverpool a bit of, like, honestly, the goal did Liverpool a bit of made them look good in a way. Talk us through. I think we've kind of banged on about City, and I'm honestly so much admiration for Pep, what he's done this season. He's transformed this team. Like, this team is nothing to what it was last season, and arguably you could say they've added 2 players. For me, it's Diaz and a rejuvenated Phil Foden. Phil Foden is now within touching distance of world class, if you ask me. He had an absolute blinder of a performance against Liverpool.
He had a breakout game, and he's been around so long, we forget he's only 20 years old. He turns 21 at the end of the season. Like, he seems to have been around ever since Guardiola got to the club. I mean, Guardiola, first 3 seasons, he built a team, and then he won 2 titles. And then last season was probably a bit like Liverpool this season. They had a run, and he had that sort of season you have to have in terms of coming back a bit from the top. But there were questions over them at the beginning of the season, how they were going. If you said at the beginning of the season that Aguero wouldn't play for 4 months and De Bruyne would be out, they go and spank Liverpool at Anfield, you probably go, what? You're serious? But they've built. It's a slightly different style to before. Guardiola teams have always actually been pretty defensively solid, mainly because they have so much of the ball. It's hard to score against them. But he's relied on his defense a bit more. He hasn't relied on star power in his teams. The other teams that he's managed, Barcelona, he had some great players. Bayern Munich, he had some great players. Even the first Man City team, he had some great players in. Sterling is I think, if he's not world class, he's on the verge of world class. But apart from that, there's no one player you look in that team and go, oh my God, he's so good, he would go to another team and make them sensationally better. And I'm talking more about the attacking 6. And that's a mark of Guardiola, that he's got these players who are very good and he's made them excellent. And they're playing the Guardiola ethos. It's a very team-oriented style. I do think Liverpool helped them with some individual errors. Alexander-Arnold made at least 2. One for the penalty that they missed, and one for the go-ahead goal. Was it the go-ahead goal? Yeah, it was for the.
It was the 2-1
for the 2-1 goal. Yeah. And then Alisson's obviously made a couple of errors as well, and like, good players can have bad games. He's a very good player, but he had a very bad game, Alisson. Just if you feel like the way that Liverpool are, they relied on him a bit against United, making a couple of saves to get that draw, but he was off today, as opposed to being really on, and you can see the result from that. But just on City, I mean, the reality of it is, I mean, firstly, they do need to fix their penalties. I think they've missed 3 out of 7. But if you're telling me that they missed 3 out of 7 this season, at least I think it's in the league, if I got my stats right. But the reality is, they've gone back to that elite level that we were questioning if they could get there, and they're noticeably better than anyone in England. I've never seen a team with 2 false nines. At halftime, they made a switch. They're playing the 4-3-3 with Phil Foden as the false 9. They moved Bernardo Silva from the midfield into the false 9 and sort of pulled Sterling and Mahrez back a bit to sort of a 4-4-2. and had a proper crack at the centre backs and forced the centre backs to defend in one-on-one situations, which is not really like Fabinho and Henderson. When a team attacks and you've got midfielders and centre backs, the distribution is great. But when you're forced back and pinned back in one-on-one battles with no one behind you, that would be their worst fear as midfielders going to play and defend.
We said that
on them.
We said that last week. Henderson, these kind of makeshift centre backs, Henderson, and I wouldn't put Fabinho as a makeshift centre back, but in combination with Hendo, if they don't have the ball, it becomes a harder job for them to defend. Whereas you have proper defenders like Van Dijk, Diaz, even Maguire can defend without the ball because they're built to do that. And it was obviously
they're trained and they can operate more on instinct. Henderson's instincts are midfielder instincts.
Absolutely,
and so when you've got the ball and you can control the game, that's fine. But when you have to react, you're slightly slower in reacting than a Maguire. Not to say Henderson's better or worse than him. Just as a defender, Maguire's faced a lot more one-on-one situations like Henderson would have faced on the weekend.
Two kind of larger points I have here is the first thing is you mentioned that City don't have much star power anymore, and they operate on a system of, let's say, 15 to 17 very good players. And that's something very much a hallmark of Klopp that he did through Dortmund. Not as much to Liverpool, because Liverpool you could argue that have 5 or 6 world-class players. It's something that kind of Klopp's, it's Klopp's kind of forte to get these very, very good players, verging on world-class, and make them work in a system that brings out the best in them. The second thing I wanted to bring up was, I want to shift to Liverpool now. I think City were almost flawless. Liverpool made them look. Liverpool did make a few unforced errors, really. I think the score would have been as bad. I think City wanted to rub their face in it. You just felt City was like, we want to score as many as we can. Last year was an anomaly.
They make a statement, yeah. And Guardiola never won at Anfield. I never knew that. That was his first win at Anfield ever as a manager. He wanted that.
That's City's first win at Anfield since 2003. Now, granted, City has spent many years out of the top, but they've been in the top 6.
That was my last year of university. That's how long ago that was.
But they spent 03 to 06 in Div 1, so they came back in 06, and then so it's a good 14 years, 14, 15 years they haven't won at Anfield. Actually, that was my what was my second point? Yeah, my second point was this, and it was a very interesting point Lawrence brought up on the kickoff, and I like this point, is that you always feel when Man City and Liverpool clash in this era of Pep and Klopp that a big loss is never really reflective of where the teams are at the moment, because it always felt like it was a chess match. And in chess matches, sometimes big players lose big against other big players, the way Ferguson lost 6-1 against Mancini back in the day. But there was something else about this win. This win felt like Liverpool's 5-1 win in the Champions League final. It felt like a shift of some sort rather than just a chess match, because they took them apart. It wasn't even a chess match. It just pressured them into mistakes. So anyway, I wanted to shift to Liverpool. I mean, you can't tell me now, this just like Leicester, just like Edmonton, a little bit United, top 4 is the goal for Liverpool now to maintain that top 4 position. You can't. I mean, you can't really look. They can't look.
I'd say what? So you don't think they'll stay top 4?
No, I'm saying that's their goal. I think they will come top 4.
That's their goal.
I think 3rd and 2nd is not out of the option for Liverpool at all. But I'm saying I think it's about who's coming 2nd, 3rd, 4th right now, rather than champions.
Liverpool should realistically still be aiming for 2nd. I actually had them finishing 2nd at the beginning of the season. I do. Have I told you? They can finish 2nd. They will have to play better than what they're playing now. They'll have to go back up. Sorry.
I had Chelsea winning the league. Sorry, just wanted to say that.
Really, I forgot.
Anyway, so Liverpool will have to go back up. Yep.
Yeah, they're the level that they're at the moment. They won't finish top 4. They can get better, but they need to get better. The reality with Liverpool, I was watching a beautiful article on Tifo. I love Tifo football. They were talking about the effect of Van Dijk on Liverpool and Alisson to a degree as well. But what happens is that there's 3 types of passing in football. There's short passing, which is tiki-taka, or say a 5-yard pass, for example. There's a long ball where you're a centre back and you thump the ball at the centre forward who battles in the air, and he and the centre back go up and win it, and it's a 50-50 when it falls. And the third type is direct. It's more long passing. It's passing to a target, but it's over a longer distance than obviously a short pass. So
the Paul Scholes crossball.
Yeah, Scholes, for example. The Hungarian side of the 1950s were actually quite famous at it as well.
Right.
With Puskas and who's the other, Hajduk Lukti and all of those fellas. That they're the team that won the 28 games in a row and lost the World Cup final on the 29th game.
Jesus.
But what was I going to say? The Van
The type
Dijk
of
plays a lot
passing.
of direct balls to Mane and Salah.
Mm-hmm.
And even Alexander-Arnold and Robertson do that as well, even to each other at times. And when they get into advanced positions, you see Alexander-Arnold playing long balls across the field to Robertson. Because they're not able to get those long balls accurately to Salah and Mane, what happens is they're trying to wriggle the way through the midfield, and they're not necessarily better than that in any other team. They don't really have the quality to do it. And Alcantara, for some reason, seems to slow up the movement and can't. He's struggling to play the way that he wants in that team. You'd think a team that wants to progress through the midfield could use someone like Alcantara, but he seems to just hold on to it too long for a player in England. In England, the tempo is a lot quicker than other countries, so he's getting, I think, a bit caught out at times. And the responsibility in him is probably a bit too heavy for a player who's just trying to get a lot of game time into himself and learn how to play in a foreign country and speak a foreign language. So what it means is if they can't get the high ball up, the players can't move up, you can't press, and you have to progress the ball through the midfield. You can lose your shape quite easily as well when you're doing that, when you're doing things that are different. So if you look at the average positions of the Liverpool players, normally versus the last 3 home games, they're all quite distorted. Players are moving out of positions to try and accommodate the pass and move sort of style that they've had to fall to. So if they can get a centre back, and this is where Kabach comes in, and I think he should start against Leicester. I think they need to roll the dice and just throw him in. He becomes important because he does have the ability to do that. Not quite as good as Van Dijk, but not many are. But I think if they can get him going, I think he can give some sort of solution. And if you can get him going with, say, Fabinho at centre back, with Henderson in front, I think if they want a bit more solidity, someone like Milner becomes quite important. If you can get some structure around that in centre back and centre midfield, I think that they can solidify that and not make everything else better. But that's what they're going to have to do. They have to find some solidity at centre back. And it's unfortunate for Liverpool that, they had they really lost 4 centre backs if you count Lovren, because they didn't really replace him. But they've just lost too many players in the one position. And particularly, like Van Dijk, for me, is their most important player. So when you lose your most important player and then his backup and then the guy next to him and then the other guy, you're just scrambling for numbers. And the fix for it is really just they're going to have to roll the dice on Davies or Kabach and just get them in, because you can't keep playing Henderson and Fabinho. Particularly their next game's Leicester. Jamie Vardy would absolutely love to go up against those two. So I think the key is going to be getting those new players in and sorted very quickly.
Absolutely. Jamie Vardy's got about 30-something goals against the so-called Big Six. So I can't disagree with anything you're saying there. I think not only did they lose 4 or 5 centre backs, they've also lost stability in the midfield with Henderson coming back. And you'd almost feel Hendo can guide, as talented as Thiago Alcantara is, you can almost feel Hendo can guide Alcantara to be a bit quicker on the ball. I do agree. He's a bit slow on the ball, the way kind of a Juan Mata is, but they're both very gifted players who can do whatever you want them to. But perhaps you need someone to guide them through the pace, as the way Hendo is a metronome of sorts.
Yeah, and Mata holds the ball in less dangerous positions than Alcantara.
Yeah.
He plays higher up the pitch. He's a bit wider. So you can do that with Mata. Mata's played for England in 8 years. So he's got his head around how to work around it. Alcantara's basically he's basically playing the most important position for that formation. That number 6 position in a 4-3-3 is the most important position. And you're throwing in a new guy who he's not really incorporated with the system yet.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll shift gears to that leaves Liverpool in a very weird position. In 4th, a point behind Chelsea. Who would have thought that? And Everton's still creeping up there.
Yeah,
could overtake them with the games in hand.
Who would have thought 2 weeks ago Liverpool would be 1 point ahead of Chelsea?
Absolutely.
I don't know what the gap was, but Liverpool lost they lost 3 home games. They're like London buses. They took 68 games. It took forever for one to come and then 3 come at the same time. But
exactly.
Chelsea, West Ham, Everton can pass them if they win their games in hand. So yeah, it's a very unusual position to see Liverpool in.
Speaking of weird results, we'll shift down to Newcastle, Southampton. 3-2 win for Newcastle with 9 men. Southampton in a very weird position. I don't think it's chaos just yet, but you're always going to have a tough time coming back from a 9-0 win. The fact that they scored goals is a positive, but the fact that they couldn't beat 10 men is not a good sign.
I think, for me, it's crisis. They've lost their last 5 games, but I do think Vestergaard coming in, probably the fact that, because they haven't scored a lot of goals this season, Southampton. They've scored 29, which is not a lot in 22 games. If you take out the 9-0 score, they've actually had a decent season defensively. But the thing with Southampton is they were really struggling to score goals in the last few games, and they've gone on that quite bad run. Like you said, they figured out how to score goals, and they actually scored. They scored. I forget if the second goal was before or after the red card, but it was very close.
I can't remember exactly the time. The second
From
goal,
memory, I think it was 3-2.
It was just before the
with the red card.
Yeah,
so
it was just before the red card. Yeah,
the goal would have been just before the red card. So they scored 2 goals before the red card, which was around the first red card was around the 40-something minute. So they had at least 40 minutes to score. They hit the post once, and they had a ball cleared off the line, but they didn't look too threatening. And I think they had an awful lot of shots in the game as well. I think what's happened with them is with Vestergaard coming in, it makes a big difference. I think his was it Bednarek? Sorry, had scored another own goal. Poor guy. They gave it to the Newcastle striker, but it was basically an own goal. But I think that for me, I know this will sound strange given it's their 5th consecutive loss, but I do feel that it might just having Vestergaard come back, I think adds a lot to that team, and I think it would just settle them down a bit. They still got space to breathe. They're still 12th on the table. They could still pass Arsenal if they win their game in hand. So they just need to just do the same thing they did when they lost to Leicester last year 9-0. That would have been probably a bigger crisis. And it's a good sign for Southampton that they've had this bad run of results, but they're still in 12th. Ward-Prowse, great free kick. 9th goal for Southampton directly from free kicks. Is it Minamino? Am I saying that right? Minamino? No?
Yep.
Minamino?
Got his debut goal.
Yeah, really good goal too. He was always going to struggle at Liverpool because he was never going to be first choice. And sometimes players just need a run of games to show how good they are. So I think he will play at a higher level at Southampton. But it was a really good finish. Japanese players, being Australian, we see him playing internationals a lot. They're actually quite quick off the mark and very technically gifted. And so he's got those qualities that a Japanese player has. But he's got that. He seems to have that streak of ruthlessness as well. So I think he's a very good acquisition for Southampton. I do see good signs, even though losing to Newcastle with 9 men is not the greatest sign. I do see some shoots there for Southampton.
I wanted to bring up something perspective I wanted to bring up was I very briefly talked about in the last video. Newcastle just got a new manager from new coach from Bournemouth, Graham Jones. He's worked under Brendan Rodgers, I believe. He's worked under Martinez with Belgium. And he's done something very interesting. Like since he's come along, they've been doing much better. They seem to have more identity going forward. They seem more purposeful. And they put Almiron into the number 10, and they're giving Saint Maxim the alien versus predator guy. They're giving him.
I saw when he set up the first goal. I just thought, oh my god, that was beautiful. Like he's just about him with the ball. Like when you watch a rugby game, for example, and the winger's got the ball. You know when the ball comes in and the winger catches it and he starts running and you hear the crowd going, "Whoa!" I feel like that watching him.
Free spirit, like a Ben Arfa, like a Ben Arfa character, like a Ronaldinho character. He's a free spirit.
Yeah.
And if you want to box him up to Steve Bruce style of football, that's probably not the best way to do it. And I think Steve Bruce has kind of come to realize after 20 years of management that perhaps he can't control every single bit of movement. So I think for me that's the key thing that's happened for Newcastle in the last in the last 2 or 3 weeks. When did they sign him? In January, so like in the last month or so. So Almiron against Southampton got the 2 goals, and Will Willock, got 1, and St. Maxim got 2 assists. I don't want to harp on too much about Southampton. I want to talk more about Newcastle. I think they're kind of creeping up the table a little bit. To go 10 men and then to go 9 men with maybe your most important player defensively in Shah shows a bit of character that they perhaps didn't have 3 or 4 months ago, and that Newcastle fans kind of been yearning for since the departure of Colaccini and Gutierrez. That ilk of player, who they did very well for Newcastle. Maybe not the results weren't there, but the character was always there. It's good to see. It's good to see Newcastle. By no means is this the return of Newcastle at all, but to a certain extent, you want to see teams like Newcastle at least fight for their fans, who basically they own a city. They run a city. They run the emotions of the city, at least.
If Newcastle lost that game, they would be 17th, which would be absolutely awful for a club of their stature. All Newcastle fans seem to accept that Mike Ashley is really just trying to keep the club up so he can sell it. and they've accepted that, and they feel that if he sells the club, then whoever comes in, as long as there's a good idea and a good philosophy around getting players, they'll go back up the table. So they're all crossing their fingers like that. But you're right. While the current ownership's there, what they expect is just to see a bit of bottle in the players. I mean, you can accept your team losing, but if your team loses and they don't seem to care, which is a harsh thing to say, but you can get that feeling from a team sometimes.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable to Newcastle fans, and rightly so. So I think that it's a weird thing with Newcastle. The football club has such a strong identity in their city, and it's a one team city. That they made that whole goal franchise built around the fact that Newcastle is this one team city. Everybody's a Geordie and all of that sort of thing. So I think that 2 wins in the last three. They've got 6 points. They would be near the relegation zone and be looking at relegation if that didn't happen. I do think they're safe, but they'll need to get a couple more results. But I really hope for Newcastle's sake that the club just gets sold. Someone just pays that price, swallows their pride, pays the price they actually wants, and he fucks off because he's been terrible to Newcastle and he's terrible to English football.
Perhaps what hurts more for them is he's a Newcastle man himself. When JP Magnus owned United and a bunch of them, that group, it was a bunch of United fans who owned United and they did well for the club. They try to make the best decisions. I mean, perhaps the worst decision they made was selling it to the Glazers for a huge profit, but that's a different story for another time. And go watch Tifo football over that one. But I think that's what hurts the most of your Newcastle fans is that you're one of us and you're fucking us over every single day, every single weekend. We have to turn up to watch our own. They hated when they sacked
He was all about being in the stands with the fans when he first came and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
imagine if he walked into the big Geordie stand right now, wouldn't get out alive.
Shot, man. Jesus, yeah. So look, Newcastle. That leaves Newcastle a little bit better off than they were last week. So in 16, 25 points. Look, you can see them improving the form with the way they're playing. They've had 2 wins in the last 6. Southampton just been hammered down. They lost the last. You're right. They lost the last 5 out of 6 games, including a 9-0 loss against United. This loss with 9 men, Newcastle. So they're in a very weird position, precarious position where they don't want to free fall. They want to cut that rope and go straight down.
Those classic games where, and this sort of game is the game that the EPL is known for. You got 2 teams that are down on form and perhaps lower in the table than they should be, just having an almighty crack at each other. And you just don't know where it's going to go.
Absolutely,
the type of game that we used to watch growing up, and as much as we love our teams, this is why people love the Premier League. There are other leagues, and every league has its own thing about it. I remember I was watching a few months ago a Spanish league game, and it was in this old shitty stadium with a terrible pitch. The crowd was basically like a chocolate box sitting on top of the fans, and the 2 teams just had a massive go at each other. It was such a beautiful game to watch. It's the energy. The Premier League is all about the energy of the players and the way that they go about it. And this game had that. In a way, you almost wish that Southampton got that late draw because it felt like that was the most appropriate result. But Newcastle did well to hang on, and it's a big result for Newcastle this season to get those 3 points because, like I said, they would go 17th if they lost, and they're better. They have to be a better team than that.
Perfect. So we'll shift gears now to an exciting game over the weekend with the 95th minute equalizer. United drew against Everton. Now, it's a heartbreaking loss. It kind of cemented the fact that United, A, are not in the title race, and B, are not ready for a title race mentally. They've gone up 2-0 to 2-2 to 3-2. Scott McTominay putting in another goal in as many games. Bruno scored an absolute gorgeous goal. From outside the box.
When Cantona came back from the suspension and scored after 13 seconds?
The chip.
Exactly like that. Looked exactly
it was. Like it was a bit more power in this one. It was absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. It didn't float.
I don't want to get into the game. I don't want to get into the game too much. I thought overall United were better. United deserved to come away with something based on performances if you took away the last 3-4 minutes. But this is the game, right? This is the game we're in. You have to agree with the analysis that United are just not, and I don't mean players wise, and nearly all of these players could walk into City and Liverpool and win the league with them. I say nearly.
Walk into the squad and get
a few ahead, but no, you could. If I told you this team at the start of the season, this starting lineup here, so just really quickly: De Gea, Shaw, Maguire, Lindelof, Wan-Bissaka, Pogba, McTominay, Greenwood, Rashford, Fernandes, Cavani. and I told you there's a chance they could win the league, it wouldn't be a realm of possibility. But there is the intangibles, the kind of mental block that they have. I think they're mentally, as Gary Neville said, I'm taking this right off Gary Neville, and I agree with it. They're mentally not ready to win the league.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll say about the game is I have a Everton fan where I work, and he said it felt like a win. I said, yep, felt like a loss for us, you know? So that, I mean, United's 3 goals that they scored were all really good goals. Bruno Fernandes, oh my God, like the way he sort of went across and went, oh no, wait, I'll take the shot. And then he bought himself that time. The 3 goals that Everton scored, definitely the first and third were mistakes. The second one started from a mistake that United cleared. Look, United's first 11 is actually a very good 11. It's as good as anyone going around in the league. At the beginning of the season, they had very serious issues with depth. I think that they fixed the issues with depth. Do I look at this team, the first 11, and think that this team is capable of winning a title? I don't think at the current levels of the players that they can. I think that you look around the pitch, you look, for example, you'd want people like Greenwood on the right, or Bissaka or Shaw to be Maguire to be consistently playing at a higher level to start thinking about that. On paper, it could work if certain things went United's way, but it's too early to say that. I agree that this team is not mentally ready to win a title. I think, to be honest, only Liverpool and City really had that mentality about them, and Liverpool seem to have lost their way. So it's kind of City's really the only team that look hungry to win the title. I shouldn't say look hungry to win the title, but look ready, willing, and able to do so. It's probably a better way of putting it. There's a lot of teams there or thereabouts, and you see this logjam between, that sort of 4th and 9th, where it's like 5 points separating them, and it's been very close the whole season. Teams sort of go up and then come down, and go up and come down. There's teams that were at the top of the league that are now in the bottom half. So no one really seems to have the mentality. And I think United almost found themselves at top by accident. It kind of felt like that when we had it. And it did feel at the time.
I think there was not a fan who didn't think it, wouldn't say it out loud, but I think every fan felt it.
Yeah,
deep in his soul. Yeah.
The other thing about accident, I don't think we were playing well enough. We seem to, like, there were games that we played worse than we did against Everton, and we won. And Everton, like, we played a higher level and we drew. But at the same time, I think people can understand why that happened, as much as it's painful to watch. The reality is, United's aim this season was to close that gap to the 16-point gap to City, the 33-point gap to Liverpool, and that's what they still need to do. If they can get within, at the moment they're 5 points behind City, if they can stay within that 5 to 10-point gap, I think most United fans would take that. Given that City did have a bit of an off season last year and a bit off this season, for all, like, statistically, they show that it's been well documented that when a player comes into the team, as well as he plays, can really only sort of make a 5 or 6 point difference at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, you're taking someone out to bring the player in. So how much better is that player? At most, you're looking at sort of a 5 to 6 point difference. And United have not, apart from possibly Cavani, I mean, Telles and Van der Beek are not really getting this United team points. It's more about getting more out of Fernandes for a whole season, Pogba back on the pitch, having the defense played with each other a bit more. But the reality is, this United team as well is a team that we were worried if they could score enough goals. They're now the leading top scorers in the Premier Division. There was a lot of games where they just sort of looked a bit ponderous, but now they actually look quite decisive in scoring these 3 goals. The problem is at the back, and it's individual errors again. I actually said before the game, United will win 2-1. They will concede because there's always a mistake in that defense.
Yeah.
And the reality is there was 3, you could even argue more, but 3 big mistakes that led to goals there. And I think that, like I said, after the Sevilla game, United's defense lacks a leader. The team as a whole lacks a leader. Schmeichel was known for his leadership. You look at guys like Bruce, you look at guys like Vidic, you look at guys like Van der Sar. They said Van der Sar would never shut up. He looked like a very calm keeper. But Patrice said, Patrice ever said that Van der Sar was never yelling at him, but he would always talk. But he would never yell. The thing about Van der Sar that he liked was he never yelled, whereas other keepers always yelled. But he said Van der Sar would always talk. Yeah. I don't see that. I don't see defensive leaders in this United group. And they need someone to come in and lead. And I think that's what Diaz has done at City. I think it's what Van Dijk did at Liverpool. It's kind of what we bought Maguire for, but we probably shouldn't have bought him for that. He's a great he's a great defender supporting someone else. He's sort of the Vidic but needs Ferdinand next to him type of player, as opposed to being the talisman of the team. So you're going to need to go and get that defensive leader, and then probably either find the bargain of the century or somehow get Upamecano to join, or just strike it lucky and get that leader in and sort out the defense, because that's where you win big games. When United were 2-0 down against Juventus in Turin in '99, who turned it around? It was leadership from Roy Keane. That leadership is what this United team is missing.
Yeah, absolutely. But in saying that, I think there's a point you have to, not you, but the point that has to be seen is that problems, you can't solve 5 problems in one season, and United seem to have solved many problems. And if defensive mistakes are a problem, defensive mistakes for me is an easy thing to fix than the culture of a club, is an easier thing to fix than having the mentality to go, we are meant to be in the Champions League every year, because that seemed to be a problem in the last few years where they didn't even know if they were Champions League side. I think everyone looking onto the Premier League this year has it has to take a massive crumble for United not to make the Champions League this year. And problems get fixed over time. Ollie seemed to have steadied the ship in terms of getting consistent performances out of the team. It weirdly can't be. He used to be big sides, but he can't be big sides anymore, which is kind of funny. But you just feel there's this kind of, as all trends go, you go down a bit, you come up, you go down a bit, you come up, and you solve problems as you go along. People want the quick fix, and it's never going to happen. And you're seeing that as a good little microcosm of that is Everton. And you're seeing the way Ancelotti over a year and a half has made them into, again, Champions League contenders. I think everyone thought Ancelotti's washed up, and he's transformed his Everton side, and it's very similar. You can see United where Everton was a few phases of changes ago, where they bring in good players and try and change the culture. And I can firmly say Ancelotti's put a stamp on his team, and you feel that kind of Milan stamp. Very creative, expressive players with a very good back line, with a very good back four. Perhaps they have to change the keeper. That's questionable, but so I think this game, you could analyze it to death, but I think it yielded more kind of bigger principles of where the two teams are at the minute. And obviously United can challenge for the league in terms of pushing Man City to the limit. They may beat City, in April, only because City might have to stretch themselves for the Champions League. But we'll see. I mean, who are United playing next, Sean? We're playing West Ham tonight, but
West Ham in the FA Cup, but West Brom in the league. Yeah,
West Brom in the league. It's a good chance to kind of get things back going, and perhaps even.
And Leicester play Liverpool, so if Leicester win at home against Liverpool, United would be 8 points clear of Liverpool. So who would have thought that? Yeah. But it's an interesting point that you make about United. What I would say is that you are talking about a United from where they were to now where they are, and you're right. There has been noticeable improvement. The trap can be, like I was sort of alluding to, that we compare them to a title-winning side, and I probably said that they're not a title-winning side, and then talked about them like they were a potential title-winning side. So you're right; they are moving in the right direction. The question is how they want to move, and like you said, sometimes you just buy one player in, and it seems to fix everything. United with Cantona, with Carrick, Liverpool with Van Dijk and Alisson. Sometimes just that one sort of signing can just click things into place. I think bringing Bruno in and to a lesser degree Cavani has helped fix things up front. And the fact that they've scored 49 goals and the top scorers in the league by a good 5 goals, I think it is, shows that
6 goals,
yeah. Well, Liverpool are 44, I think. Anyway.
Oh, Liverpool do it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but the point being that a lot of those problems about putting the ball in the back of the net seem to have been addressed. Maybe that 49 is a bit laid a bit by that Southampton result, but you take it, the reality is that they're actually scoring goals and scoring enough goals per game. They're having those moments where you can get a decisive result. So that those going forward, they seem to have fixed that. I do think they need to fix a few things, and it might not even be the defense. It might just be the protection in front of the defense. They don't necessarily have a defensive midfielder. Matic is he's not playing 2 weeks a game, Matic, so they might just need someone to protect the defense a bit better. Maybe like someone like a Thomas Partey, and maybe just like in the way Chelsea got Makalele, and suddenly John Terry and Ashley Cole look world class. Ashley Cole, he came later, but
Carvalho, John Terry,
Carvalho and Terry and Petr Cech suddenly look world class with Makalele in front of them. Sometimes
I remember when Makalele came, and Zidane made a comment a few years later saying, when we lost Makelele, I knew we were not going to win anything. Like, that was our best player. Gerrard said the same thing about Xabi Alonso, and perhaps I guess it's kind of nice to hear that these kind of non-glamorous positions, how important they are, that number 6, and they even call it the Makelele position, right? You know, in bed and in the field.
That was hilarious as well. They saw Makelele because they bought David Beckham. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's right.
Oh my God. Like, it was just, you're just thinking, like, you could see it. I was like, no, you know, for
yeah, I do. Yeah, there's one. Yeah, they were creating that class of Galacticos that never really kind of. I mean, they didn't win.
There was just too much going
Champions
on.
League.
They were trying to fit in Figo, Beckham, Zidane, Raul, Ronaldo,
Thomas Gravesen
into the same team, and Thomas Gravesen, yeah, and Pavon.
Have you heard about Thomas Gravesen now?
No,
he is one of the richest footballers not playing football. He's worth about 400 or 500 million.
Is he invested in Tesla or something? What happened?
No, he invested in the Vegas boom in like the kind of 2006 2010. He invested in all these buildings, and he's just and he's got a 22-year-old Swedish wife as well. He's doing really well.
Yeah, and no hair.
Poor guy. And alopecia, but it's the least of his problems.
Does he?
No. He just looks like a thug. Yeah. Just really quickly before we finish off, Sham, key player for you this week, or key moment for you?
Key moment for me, I think that the sort of 3 minutes from Alisson. He's such an important player to them. He as well, like, he could have helped Liverpool hung on. He did against United. There's some games where he's come up big, but the mistakes came from him, and it's so unfortunate. It doesn't mean, it doesn't lower him in my estimations at all. He just had a bad game, and you know, even the best players can have bad games. Berbatov missed a couple of goals. He's still a great player. You know what I mean?
Still the best player.
So that key moment was really that sort of when the game went from 1-0 to 3-1 very quickly for City.
I have to say, you watch the Iceland moment with Greenwood and Foden. Like, Greenwood I don't think he's regressed at all. I just think, as all 18-year-olds do, he's having a patch of bad form, or kind of satisfactory form. But Phil Foden has blossomed, and he was dropped by Guardiola, and he hasn't played, and he's come on to become, I mean, he's some player, man. He's more in the ilk of Iniesta. If you want to compare him to one of the greatest to ever done it, I feel he's more of an Iniesta. But he has a wicked left foot, and he showed it on the weekend. And for me, I never liked the guy. I just had something, don't know. I just didn't. He just always rubbed me the wrong way. But I gotta say, I've eaten my words. I think they're onto something, man. And this would be, I'm trying to now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this would be probably the best player City's ever produced thus far, as in the academy.
Since they were bought out, yeah.
You can argue Sancho, but Sancho's I'm talking about someone who stayed at the club and been produced by the academy and potentially going to stay here, for many years to come. And they should be proud of him. The fans of the club should be very proud of him.
Ferdinand is their greatest academy product? Probably not.
Absolutely. Joe Cole, Michael Carrick, Frank Lampard, and the Defoe, the whole generation they missed out on winning a Champions League with. But yeah, look, the Man City fans and the club will be very proud to see such a player come through. And hopefully they did. Hopefully they put more through, man. It's always good to see a club kind of, and that's why I think City have had a bit of respect this year. And I think they will gain more respect when they start making their own players. You feel that any title that City ever wins, people just go, "Oh, it's City." But there's something about this year that there's a bit of respect on the title that I have.
My football team in Australia is West Coast in the Australian League. They joined the league. They're one of sort of the expansion clubs, and they joined in the mid '80s, where some teams have been around for 100 years, and they've been a very successful club. There was one year that they finished last, and one of the club greats said, someone from another club came up to him and goes, "You aren't a great club until you finish last." And City almost, because they've gone through the struggle, everyone just thinks, "Oh, Guardiola's there, the players are there, it's all going to fall in place." And so when it falls into place, you go, "Yeah, you know what? So what? You didn't do the work," which is a harsh thing, but that's what people assume. People can see this season that City started, they struggled, they did the work, and they're now moving ahead. And I think there's a level of respect that's given to City for that. It's not fair comparing that to other seasons because they did all the hard work there. It's just that it's a bit more visible this year because they've gone from being Superman to being Batman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, great analysis as always, Sham. So got a few big games coming this weekend. We're not going to do an FA Cup video. But we are going to do a Premier League video on the Friday. Few big games. We're just going to just kind of quickly run through some of the key games.
Leicester, Liverpool.
Liverpool playing Leicester, City playing Spurs on Sunday. Arsenal playing Leeds. That'll be a very good game. Southampton playing Wolves. United, not a very big game this weekend. It's you almost feel it's a guaranteed win, but you never know in this game. So
careful.
We'll be there to preview the Leicester, the City game, and potentially the Arsenal game as well. So some huge games. I'll see you on Friday, Sham. And as always, thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We got a 5 Hour Pass podcast. My name is Suddy. This is Sham. Keep football simple, and as always,
keep.